So chances are all of you recognize this man's face, Steve Jobs. So passed away a while ago. But if you know his history, do you know that he founded Apple, the company Apple? If all of you have an iPhone or a Mac or any of those things, so he founded this company. But then, did you know he was fired from his own company? Did you know that? His board of directors fired him. And then years later, they hired him back. They realized the mistake he had made. I mean, this is the guy who goes on to start Pixar. I mean, just for something to do on the side. I mean, did you know he started that? I mean, just brilliant, brilliant man. So they realized their mistake. They hired him back. And so he used to do these sessions. They were Apple developer conferences. Some of you may have seen some of these things or clips from him where he would do this. And so he did this for a long, long time after he was rehired back at Apple. Now, if you want to do something really, really interesting, Google or go to YouTube and look up Apple Developer Conference from 1997. This is what Steve looked like back in 1997. This is actual clip. It's the best I could find. It's pixelated, I know, from 1997. So he was here that day in front of this massive crowd, talking about the future of Apple, where they were going to go. And the crazy thing about Steve is that he would open it up for open Q&A time at the end of his sessions. So this massive crowd. Steve Jobs is just back at Apple after having been fired and then coming back, and you can find this. If you YouTube it, you can watch what happens. So Steve Jobs opens it up, and this guy walks up to the mic and he says this: "Mr. Jobs, you're a bright and influential man. But it's sad and clear that on several counts you've discussed, you don't know what you're talking about. I'd like, for example, for you to express in clear terms how, say, Java and any of its incarnations address the ideas embodied in OpenDoc. Oh, and when you're finished with that, perhaps you can tell us what you personally have been doing for the last 7 years." Those were the years when he was fired. There was a groan in the audience. I mean, people were like, "Oh, you just stood up and said that into a microphone?" And look at Steve's body language. That's right after the question. He sat on a stool. He didn't say anything for a long time. He picked up that bottle of water behind him. He took a drink. Can you imagine being in that situation? I mean, any of you have ever tried to do an open public forum? That is a highly challenging thing. Now, the reason I'm showing you this is because this is the world that we live in right now. It is a world where, I mean, that hasn't just been going on since, or that didn't end in 1997. We live, like I've been saying, in a world that is more angry today than I've ever seen. There are people who are angry, and they don't mind telling you how angry they are. And what he needed in that moment was called emotional intelligence, right? He had to have the ability to handle what was going on inside of him and what was going on in the room. And the reality is, all of us need that in a world like this that's as hostile and angry as ours. But again, like I've said, if you work in anything that deals with customers today, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Customers are more hostile, more angry. They don't like supply chain issues. They don't like the work shortages with the number of employees. And so they take it out on everybody. And so many of you deal with angry people on a daily basis. It's a huge issue, right? And it's not just in our work environments, right? How many of you have a family relationship today that's damaged or broken and you're not very close because you're hurt or they're angry at you? I mean, this is a common thing right now. Fractured families. Some of you, it's your spouse that's mad at you right now. They're angry. For some of you, it's one of your kids. They're mad at you. They're really upset. And there's a little bit of a distance developing in that relationship. You can feel that you're not as close to one of your kids right now or your parents as you used to be. And there's damage. This is such an essential issue. And so we've been talking about this for weeks. We've been saying emotional intelligence requires these pieces. First, I have to be aware of what's going on inside of me. Can you imagine what was going on inside of him in that moment? Can you imagine what he's feeling? This guy wants to rub his nose in the fact that he's been fired from his own company and just rehired after 7 years of absence. How much did that hurt? Imagine all the feelings he's feeling in that moment. Emotional intelligence begins with that. I have to catch what's going on inside of me, and I have to control it, right? Because doesn't he have options right now? He can repress or ignore those emotions, or he can let them fly. And people do that, right? They let them fly. And the Bible says a fool gives vent to their anger. It's like, I got to control this. I got to be aware of what's happening so I can manage it appropriately. But then the other central element of emotional intelligence, which is so important today, is others in interaction. I have to be aware of what's going on inside of you, and then I have to be able to interact with you in a positive way to be able to calm that anger down and restore the relationship. We call this relationship management. Relationship management is your ability to use your awareness of your emotions and their emotions to manage those interactions successfully. How good are you at relationship management? How close are your friendships and your romantic relationships and your parent-child relationships and your coworker relationships? Emotional intelligence is affecting everything we touch. So that's why for weeks we've been in this series called Master Your Emotions. You have to be aware of this so you can know how to use them. And so we're going to continue this series today by talking about this, how to use emotions to build stronger relationships. I want to ask you to open your program, take out the notes you'll find inside, grab a pen or something to write down as we go through this today. There are going to be some really key things to talk about. And welcome, of course, those of you who are watching online. Love to hear from you. So if you're watching at our website at PennielChurchLife.com, you know the notes are right there. If you're watching on YouTube, in the description section are the notes. You're welcome to pop those open right now and follow along. So let's jump into this. And we're only going to talk about two things today. Sorry, I don't have time for everything. But first thing I want you to learn to do is pay attention to bids for connection. Bids for connection. So this is what we need to learn how to do. In those moments when there's tension in the relationship, things aren't going the way we want them to go, or we see someone in pain, we need to recognize that for what it is and know what to do with it. So let me explain this. There was a man who was writing about his spiritual journey, and from the age 12 to 18, his faith fell apart. Not an uncommon thing, right? Some of you, your faith fell apart in your teenage years. Very common. So for him, he was from a troubled home. His home life was just so overwhelmingly toxic, he didn't know how to process it. He was regularly going to church. He was a part of the youth group at 12 years old. And one day he said they were sitting in this small group. There were only 5 kids, 5 other boys and him. His name was Jared, and the life group leader. And they were all supposed to have memorized a Bible verse from the last week. And and the life group leader said, why don't we go around and talk about how are you experiencing God right now? And this kid is 12 years old. His life is falling apart. He is so depressed. He's sitting there and he's in his mind, he's thinking, I don't feel anything from God. And he's debating. He knew instinctively at the age of 12 that the only way to really deal with this pain was to talk about it. But that's not true. The only way to really deal with the pain is to talk about it with safe people. But he didn't know that part. So he took a risk at the age of 12, and when it was his turn to talk, he said this to the group. He said, I told everyone I'm struggling, I'm hurting, I'm having a hard time, and I'm really having a hard time with my faith and my relationship with God. Now, what do you think was the response in the room? He said it was blank stares. For a long time, nobody said anything, and he felt so embarrassed that he'd been vulnerable. And then finally, the youth group leader said, well, Jared, I'd encourage you just to pray harder. God will take care of it. Now, the problem is many people don't know that was an incredibly wrong answer to give. Some of you are thinking, hey, great answer, he nailed it. No, he didn't. He didn't nail it at all. Because the impact of his words on that kid were significant. He said, I remember going home feeling defeated. I felt insulted. I felt not good enough. My small group leader had just confirmed everything I already thought about myself. I'm broken and I suck at being a Christian because if this is all on me, I'm just not praying hard enough. And I just need to pray harder. He said that experience turned him away from God and church, like I said, for years and years of his life. Now, I'm not trying to come down hard on that life group leader. How many of you would have known what the right thing was to say in that moment? Or what was even happening? When somebody expresses emotion to you, I mean, that's pretty vulnerable, right? To say something like that, I'm hurting. I'm really struggling with my faith in God. You ever heard anyone say that? I don't know what I believe about God. Do you know what to do in that moment? They are making a bid for connection with you, and I need to explain what that means because many of you have never heard the phrase. So let's talk about what this means. A bid for connection is just like the image is saying they are reaching out to you. Now, the way I learned about this, and this is so significant for all of you who are in any kind of romantic relationship or ever hope to be, Dr. John and Julie Gottman are the experts in America today on marriage. You want to read anything? You want to learn about marriage? Go to these people. For 40 years, I've been running this scientific lab where they hook couples up. Matter of fact, Shannon and I were watching this video this last week where they were actually showing this. So you can see all the buttons and things all over the couple. They actually monitor everything, including how much extra sweat is produced in your palms based on the question that you're asked. They put you in what they call fidget chairs. You know what a fidget chair is? It monitors how much you fidget based on the question that you're asked by your spouse. Isn't that awesome? I mean, they track everything to see, because what he was after was the answer to this question. Why is it that you have some relationships that are like that 60 years later? I mean, she's still smiling when he kisses her hand, and others, 6 months later, they're like the other one. He said, what is it that's causing some relationships to be masters and some to be disasters? What's the key thing? And one of the things he noticed was how they respond to each other when one of them makes a bid for connection. I'll explain what a bid is in just a moment. But he said, well, here's what they learned in their research. The masters, the couple in the upper left-hand corner, the ones that really make it and make it great, they turn towards and they catch those bids for connection 86% of the time. So they're not perfect. They don't catch them all. But 86% of the time, they catch those bids for connection. Now, this is really important. I'm showing you how this applies in a marriage relationship, but this applies in every parenting relationship in the room. Your kids are always making bids for connection with you. Your friends make bids for connection with you. If you're a manager, your employees make bids for connection to you. So I'm applying it here and showing you how it works in marriage, but it works in every key relationship you're in. Now, you want to guess? What percentage of the time do the disasters catch those bids for connection? So the masters aren't perfect. 86% of the time they catch them. Here's what he saw in his research. They only catch it 33% of the time. So they still catch a third of them, and they handle a third of them right. But they're missing 2/3, and it destroys their relationship. So what is a bid for connection? What am I talking about? It could be anything. It could be something like this, an affectionate touch, handshake, pat, squeeze, kiss, hug, back or shoulder rub. So your spouse walks by in the kitchen and you're sitting there and they just put their hand on your shoulder as they walk by. It's a bid for connection. And we don't know that. We don't know that that's what that is. It's just a bid for connection. Facial expressions. They wink at you, they smile, blow you a kiss, stick their tongue out playfully, not in a mean, rude, kind of juvenile way, right? Facial expressions are bids for connection. You look at your significant other and you smile, and it's a bid. You're making a bid. Gestures, opening a door, buying a gift, offering a place to sit, or doing a chore for them without even being asked. I mean, that's really a bid for connection. You did the laundry? What? Oh my goodness. It's a bid for connection. Or questions like, how was your day? How was traffic? How was work or school? How'd the big meeting go? And I thought it was too late to put it in here, but especially in our society right now, texting each other. I see this a lot when couples are getting started. They text a lot, they snap each other a lot, and what happens if somebody doesn't text back? They're like, oh no, is it okay? Have we fallen apart? It's like, what did I say something wrong? They're making a bid for connection. The problem with that in our mobile society is it allows you to make bids for connection 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's like, who can keep up with that? Nobody can keep up with that. But it's a bid for connection, and that's how they feel. If you don't write back, they don't feel connected. It can be something little like this. You ever been sitting next to somebody and all of a sudden they just burst out laughing? Or they were like, ugh. They grunted or they sighed big. It's a bid for connection. They want you to go, what was that about? They're making a bid for connection. These are all bids for connection. Remember, what percentage of the time do the masters catch it? 86% of the time. They see that. They feel your hand on their shoulder as you walk by, and they know what to do. Do you know what to do? Great relationships are about other people, right? And so they're making these bids in your life all the time. Your kids are making this bid in your life all the time. I wish I had known this when I was a young dad, because I missed thousands and thousands of bids for connection because I was so wrapped up in what I was doing. Because the disasters only catch it 33% of the time. Now, here's why. Now, some of you are like, man, this isn't very overt, right? This is kind of sneaky bid for connection. They don't come up to you and say, hey, I'm making a bid for connection with you, right? They don't do that. It's kind of like sneaky bids. This is really important, and I'd never thought about this till this week. All of these bids are purposefully subtle. Now, think about why. You're smart enough to get this. Why? Why don't we walk up to each other and say, hey, I really want to connect with you right now? Why don't your kids say that to you? Why doesn't your spouse say that to you? You know why? It's incredibly vulnerable to say those words to someone. How good are we at vulnerability in America? We are terrible at it. And if I walk up to you and I say, Dad, I need to feel more connected to you, and you say, I'm watching the game, or I don't have time for that, or you blow my bid off, or I say that to my spouse, and she just ignores it and walks past me and doesn't, you know how much that hurts? But if I just brush her shoulder and keep walking and she just ignores it, that hurts less. There's a reason why bids for connection are subtle. Because when we are fully vulnerable like that, we give them too much power to hurt us. So we do these subtle things and hope they catch it. And you have three options when this is happening. You can turn toward and acknowledge those bids, you can turn away and miss them, and you can turn away or outright reject them. Now, the second and the third one cause terrible damage. If you don't catch bids for connection and acknowledge them and smile back or wink back or return their hand with your hand or return their kindness with, hey, thank you. The laundry is amazing. Thank you. I can't believe you did that. If you miss their bids for connection, then two things will happen. The relationship will begin to separate little by little. Relationships don't fall apart because of one huge thing. They fall apart because of 1,000 cuts. And relationships aren't put together because you decide to have a date night once a week. They're put together because you have 1,000 connections during the week. You catch these bids. You catch them with your kids, and you catch them with your employees, and you catch them with your friends. And you especially catch them in all of your romantic relationships. Now, the question is, again, if masters catch this 86% of their time, and disasters catch it 33% of the time, where are you at? On the continuum, which one do you fall closer to? I mean, this is real painful for people. There are a lot of people in America right now who feel so lonely in their marriage because their bids for connection are ignored or rejected all the time. And there are a lot of kids in America right now who feel completely unloved by their mom or dad because their bids for connection are rejected constantly. Emotional intelligence means I'm paying attention to the emotional cues in the people around me. And I'm catching them. Not always. Good news. I find it so great that I can be masterful and only catch 86%. That gives me 14% I get to miss. Okay, thank God. I don't have to be perfect. I just got to get better at this. So this is the first thing you say. How good are you at catching those bids for connection? Now the second thing, and this is the only, oh boy, I got to show you this. This is so significant. Once you understand this, go and look at the life of Jesus, because he was a master at doing bids for connection. Now, his bids for connection didn't come out of a fear of vulnerability. You don't leave heaven and come to earth on purpose if you're afraid of being vulnerable. Jesus didn't do that. He wasn't afraid of being vulnerable. But he was a master at putting out these little touches and trying to get people to respond. This story is one of my favorites. So it says, as soon as a Samaritan woman, Jesus was traveling with his disciples. He came to this well. His disciples went into town to buy food, and he was sitting there alone, and it says a Samaritan woman came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, please give me a drink. Now, to us, that's pretty innocent. It's like, no big deal. But 2,000 years ago, culturally, this was all upside down. Men didn't talk to women. Religious leaders like Jesus, who would be considered a rabbi in their world, certainly didn't talk to women. There's this hilarious part about, in history, they called them the black and blue Pharisees because they wouldn't even look at another woman when they were walking. So if a woman was coming down the street, they'd cover their eyes and they'd walk into things, and they called them the black and blue Pharisees. It's hilarious because religious men didn't talk to women, and they sure didn't talk to a woman like this, and Jews didn't like Samaritans at all, so Jews didn't talk to Samaritans. So everything about this story is wrong, everything. Jesus talks to her and says, hey, would you give me a drink? It's like, nobody would have done that. And the woman was surprised. Jews refused to have anything to do with Samaritans. And she said, you're a Jew, I'm a Samaritan. Why are you asking me for a drink? He never answers the question, if you know the rest of the story. Matter of fact, to my knowledge, he never gets a drink from this woman because it wasn't about water. Do you understand what he was doing here? He was making a bid for connection with this woman. What he really, really wanted was to give this woman eternal life. And he goes on to say something along the lines of, if you knew who it was that was talking to you, I could give you water that would feed your soul for the rest of your existence. He was making a bid, and even that was a bid for connection, because she's like, you don't even have a pot. How are you going to draw water out? And that's exactly what he wanted. He wanted her to keep going and going. He was making bids for connections. He did this all the time. One of the saddest stories in my time reading the Bible is, have you ever read the interaction with Jesus before Pilate? So Pilate's the ruler. He has the right to free Jesus or to condemn him to be crucified. One of the saddest interactions in the Bible, Jesus is standing in front of him, and he makes a comment about truth. And he knew that this was Pilate's biggest thing. As a matter of fact, Pilate literally says, what is truth? And then it says in the next verse, he turns and walks away. He's actually asking the right question. And on top of that, he's asking it to the right person. Jesus, who knows what the truth is. And he never waits for an answer. He turns and walks away from Jesus. Jesus did this all the time. He was constantly making bids for connections with what he would say or how he would say it or what he would do. And his hope was that they would turn to him and say, hey. And here's why this is important. I want you to understand this about your God. Do you know that our God is every single day making a bid for connection with you? Do you know that? Every single day, our God is making a bid for connection with you. There's not a single moment of any day where he doesn't wish that you would turn to him and want to be in a conversation with you or more deeply connected to you. He's always after you because he loves you. I've told you before, my kids are all grown and gone now. Recently, they were all together. I had all of them in the room for the first time in years. And there is so much joy in that moment for me as a dad. I mean, it is just like the pinnacle of, it's like you go right to it's like, I got my kids and I get to spend time with them. And I'm so happy when I'm with them. And that is the smallest taste of how God the Father feels when he gets to connect to me and you. You matter that much to him. He's always trying to connect with you. So, some of you may be sitting here listening to this and going, Brian, what in the world? How am I supposed to do this kind of bid for connection with everybody? You can't. You can't, okay? But here's the priority list. You make a bid, you respond to the bids for connection with your spouse if you're married. 86% of the time, you respond to the bids for connection with your kids. They come up, Dad, Mom, I got to show you this. Mute the TV or turn it off. Put down what you're reading. Set aside the checkbook as you're writing out the bills. Put your phone down and look at them and get that bid right. You don't have to get it right every time, but you want to get that bid right over and over again in those important key relationships. Your friends, your family, your spouse, and if you're a boss, your employees. They need to know that you care. All right, you know what? I don't have time to do justice with the rest of this, so I think what I'm going to do is really break this into two parts because I don't want to miss everything else that I've prepared today. So here's what I want to ask as we just finish up today. I want to put a slide up here, and I know that some of this content won't even fit because I shortened this even more than I was planning on it, but I didn't want to rush through that section. What I really want you to know is there is never going to be a day in your life where the people that really matter to you aren't trying to make bids for connection with you. I want you to know this, that your kids want to connect with you. Now, here's the thing, by the way. If you blow that off enough, the day will come where they won't want to connect with you. You ever hear the old Cats in the Cradle song? Remember how the song ends? He's chasing them, and they don't care. You can blow this so that you damage that relationship so bad they don't care about connecting anymore. Same thing with your marriage. You can create a disastrous marriage relationship by missing those bids to the point where they don't care. They just don't want to connect anymore. Same thing with your friends. You can damage the relationship so much that they just don't even try anymore. And I've seen that over and over again. They try to go out with you. They try and go out with you. They try and what happens then? Then they stop trying. So don't miss those bids for connection. And respond to those bids. Yeah, we're going to skip all of this. Sorry, we'll do it next time. Just ignore what's on the slides. So I want to jump all the way down here to this. Yeah, we'll get to this next time. Sorry. Respond to the bids. Know what your target is now. Does everyone know what your target is? 86%. That's your target. And it's subtle. It's going to be really subtle. So you got to shoot for that. And ignore the second one because we didn't even get to it. We're going to get to that next time. But just understand what's at stake here today. Do you understand this? Are you clear now? Emotional intelligence about relationships. And if you learn to pay attention to these emotional moments, because that's what they are, someone is risking something with you because you matter to them. And you have to catch that emotional moment and respond to them. Now, again, as I said, if you're just beginning your spiritual relationship, and I know there are a lot of people watching online right now, if you're just beginning your spiritual relationship, I don't think there's anything more significant I could ever tell you than God is making a bid for you. You matter so much to him. And now we tend to put into that relationship shame, right? So many people I've encountered in my life were like, yeah, but Brian, you don't know what I've done. You don't know how long I did it. You don't know what I've done in my past, as if that matters. You think there's anything that my kids will ever do that will cause me not to love them? And I'm a flawed dad. Our Father is a perfect being of love, and he loves you, and he is making a bid for connection with you every day. Matter of fact, do you know what the cross really was? It was the ultimate bid for connection. Because here's the spiritual reality that Jesus revealed. Our Father in heaven is perfectly loving. You cannot bring anything full of anything other than love into his presence. Now, what are we full of? We're full of all kinds of things that aren't loving. I mean, there's jealousy inside of us, cruelty inside of us. There's vindictiveness and bitterness inside of us. There's all this stuff that is not love, and we've brought that into this world over and over again. So there is a gap between our perfect Father of love and all of us, and Jesus came to bridge the gap. The cross is about connection. When Jesus died on the cross, what he did is he took into himself all the unloving things I've ever said or done. Did you know that? All the unloving things you and I have ever said or done, he pulled into himself and paid in full for them and then rose again, so that if you want it, you can connect deeply with God the Father, God Almighty. Because Jesus will forgive you completely and put you in a relationship with him. Let me have you bow your heads. Maybe this is the next step for you spiritually. Let this God of love pull you into his family, because it's what he wants so bad. He wants to connect deeply with you. And if you're ready for something like this, with your head bowed and your eyes closed, just say something like this in your heart to him. Say, Jesus, I'm turning to you today. I want to connect. I don't want religion. I don't want rules. I don't want rituals. I want a real relationship with you. And Jesus, I heard you paid on the cross for what I've done that breaks that relationship. So please forgive me. Come make your home inside of me today. I'm putting my trust in you. In Jesus' name, amen. Now, as we finish, can I ask you all to grab this little card out of your program? Again, even if you're a regular attender, I just ask you to take it out and just put your name down so we know you're here, and then just drop it in the offering boxes on the back wall. But if you prayed and asked for his forgiveness, or you want us to pray about something, there's some places you can write some things down in here. Let us know. We've got a whole team of people that will pray for you. If you're watching online, go to our website at pendlechurchlife.com, and in the upper right-hand corner is a box. It's I said yes to Jesus box. Check that box. Let us know what you've done, and we'll follow up with you as a church. Now, for all of you here, sorry for those of you watching, on your way out, please take one of the notebooks. They're our gift to you. If you want any of those other resources, take what you want. We are glad to give this to you today. Our hope is that it really helps you spiritually. If you have questions, would you do me the favor, as you're reading the Bible, write the questions down and send them to me. It's just my name, brianrudesill@gmail.com. Hey, Brian, I was reading this in Ephesians today. I have no idea what it meant. Great. I'd love to know, so that we can talk about those and address them together, okay? Thanks so much for coming. Hope to see you again next time.